In 1966, a small British manufacturer solved a problem Ferrari would spend 45 years calling unsolvable. The Jensen FF delivered permanent all-wheel drive, with a precise 37 to 63 torque split and mechanical ABS in a production Grand Tourer, and almost no one cared. Porsche quietly bought one to study. Audi did the same. Ferrari drew a hard line against it. What finally broke that resistance? Jensen's FF arrived in 1966 as a production Grand Tourer that quietly rewrote the rules for high-performance road cars. Under its long hood sat a Chrysler Vive 8, but the real innovation was hidden beneath the floor: the Ferguson Formula all-wheel drive system. This was not an off-road gimmick or a rally experiment. The FF delivered permanent four-wheel drive with a fixed 37% of engine torque sent to the front wheels and 63% to the rear, a ratio selected for stability and rear-biased handling at speed. The architecture relied on a planetary center differential, a set of one-way clutches, and a chain-driven transfer box. The one-way clutches allowed the system to react instantly when a wheel began to slip, automatically locking up to redirect power to the axle with grip. There were no electronics or driver inputs, just mechanical logic responding to changing traction. The FF's drivetrain was not its only technical leap. Jensen equipped the car with the Dunlop Maxarette mechanical anti-lock braking system, a device borrowed from aviation and never before seen in a road car. The Maxarette used a spinning flywheel and a cam mechanism to sense when a wheel was about to lock. If it detected a sudden loss of speed in the brake drum, the system would briefly reduce hydraulic pressure, allowing the tire to regain grip before full braking force returned. In the mid-1960s, this meant the FF could brake harder and more safely than any of its contemporaries. Years before electronic ABS became industry standard, for a Grand Tourer of its era, the Jensen FF stood alone. It proved that permanent, all-wheel drive and advanced safety technology could coexist with speed and luxury. The hardware was complex, but robust, designed to operate seamlessly and invisibly, offering drivers a level of control that would not be matched by mainstream manufacturers for decades. Porsche engineers quietly took delivery of Jensen FF chassis 119008 not long after the car's public debut. This was no casual purchase. The vehicle was shipped directly to Stuttgart, where Manfred Bantel, Porsche's chief test driver and engineer, led a series of evaluations on the company's private track. The focus was not on the American V8 or the British bodywork, but on the Ferguson Formula all-wheel drive system and the mechanical anti-lock brakes, technologies that had no parallel in Porsche's own lineup. Porsche's internal records confirm that the car remained in the company's hands for years, its drivetrain dismantled and studied in detail. The Jensen FF's influence did not stop there. Audi, in the late 1970s, acquired an FF for its own research, with Laird Julius Farquhar Urquhart overseeing the teardown. The lessons drawn from the British car fed directly into Audi's Quattro project, which would later redefine high-performance all-wheel drive. Despite modest sales, the Jensen FF became a touchstone for engineers, an object of study, not nostalgia. While buyers overlooked its significance, technical teams across Europe treated the FF as a benchmark, proof that advanced drivetrain concepts could be realized, even if the market was not yet ready to accept them. Inside Ferrari's engineering offices in the late 1980s, the idea of all-wheel drive was not dismissed out of ignorance. Mauro Forghieri, the company's technical director, led the creation of the 408 4RM prototype, an experiment that placed a hydraulic-coupled torque-splitting all-wheel drive system into a mid-engine Ferrari chassis. The prototype split power roughly 70% to the rear and 30% to the front, using ZF differentials and a bespoke hydraulic transfer case. Only 2 examples were built, each serving as a rolling laboratory rather than a production candidate. Forghieri's work proved that Ferrari had the technical means to build an all-wheel drive sports car, but the project never reached customers. The reason for that lay less in engineering hurdles and more in the philosophy that defined the brand. In 1991, Piero Ferrari, then the company's deputy chairman, was unequivocal. He stated that all-wheel drive did not suit Ferrari's DNA. For Piero, the company's identity was inseparable from rear-wheel drive, a platform that prioritized balance, sharp response, and the kind of feedback that demanded and rewarded driver skill. The expectation was clear. Ferrari's customers sought a car that communicated every nuance of the road through the steering and chassis, a machine that felt alive and immediate, not insulated or dulled by additional driveline hardware. This stance was not a matter of technical ignorance. The 408 4RM's existence was well known inside Maranello. The rejection of all-wheel drive was a deliberate act rooted in the conviction that adding front-driven wheels would compromise the very qualities that made a Ferrari a Ferrari. Weight, complexity, and the risk of diluting the car's character outweighed any perceived gain in traction or safety. For decades, this philosophy kept all-wheel drive out of Ferrari's product line, even as rivals in Germany and Britain quietly studied the same principles Jensen had put into practice a generation earlier. Traditional all-wheel drive systems demanded a center differential, a mechanical heart that split power between front and rear axles. This component, essential for managing torque across all four wheels, brought with it a host of complications. The center differential itself was heavy, and the drive shafts, transfer cases, and additional hardware required to connect everything added up quickly. For a company like Ferrari, obsessed with minimizing weight and maximizing responsiveness, the numbers were impossible to ignore. Conventional all-wheel drive setups imposed a penalty of about 200 kilograms. That figure wasn't just a statistic, it represented a fundamental shift in the car's character. Extra mass over the nose dulled steering feedback, slowed directional changes, and altered the way the car responded to throttle and brake inputs. Power-to-weight ratios suffered, and the delicate balance that defined Ferrari's rear-wheel drive architecture was lost. Engineers and executives alike saw this as a threat to the very qualities that set their cars apart. Every kilogram added by a conventional all-wheel drive system risked muting the immediacy that Ferrari drivers expected. The weight and complexity of a center differential, along with the associated drivetrain, stood in direct opposition to the company's priorities. For decades, this engineering reality rendered all-wheel drive incompatible with Ferrari's standards for agility, feel, and performance purity. Amedeo Felisa approached the all-wheel drive dilemma at Ferrari with a willingness to rewrite the core architecture, not just adapt it. His solution, introduced with the 4RM system, abandoned the traditional center differential that had defined every previous high-performance all-wheel drive layout. Instead, Felisa's team engineered two separate transmissions, a compact two-speed gearbox mounted at the front and the familiar rear transaxle at the back. The front gearbox drew power directly from the engine via a power transfer unit, bypassing the need for a heavy, centrally located differential and the long drive shafts that came with it. This arrangement allowed the front wheels to receive torque only when necessary, while the majority of power continued to flow to the rear, preserving the handling characteristics that defined the brand. Ferrari claimed this dual transmission layout was about 50% lighter than conventional all-wheel drive systems, a figure that directly addressed the mass penalty that had made earlier solutions unacceptable. By solving the packaging and weight problems, Felisa's 4RM system delivered all-wheel drive traction without sacrificing Ferrari's rear-biased performance priorities, a technical and philosophical breakthrough that finally made all-wheel drive compatible with Maranello's identity. The arrival of the 2011 Ferrari FF delivered a result that could not be argued away. Ferrari's first production all-wheel drive model was no technical compromise. It packed a 6.3-liter V12, producing 651 brake horsepower, sending the car past 200 miles per hour, figures that placed it squarely in the realm of Ferrari's purest Grand Tourers. The FF's four-seat layout and hatchback body made it a true GT, yet the car's performance numbers left no room for doubts about its intent. In repeated independent tests, the FF matched the lap times of the 599 GTB, Ferrari's previous rear-wheel drive V12 flagship. The old belief that all-wheel drive would blunt Ferrari's edge, slow its reflexes, or dilute its character collapsed under the weight of evidence. Here was a car that delivered both the traction of 4-driven wheels and the speed, balance, and feedback that defined Maranello's best. The idea Jensen had proven in 1966, long dismissed as irrelevant to Ferrari's world, had finally found its place, validated not by theory but by the stopwatch and the road. Today, all-wheel drive defines high-performance Grand Tourers, a reality Ferrari once dismissed as heresy. The technical hurdles of torque split, weight, and complexity are now engineering benchmarks, not barriers. Jensen's overlooked solution is vindicated. In innovation, timing shapes legacy as much as invention itself. What are we undervaluing now?